rubbed me the wrong way was not only that people were gloating, it's that there was a contingent of people, mostly like these right-wing anonymous men, who were gloating precisely because they could hornily picture putting themselves in the shoes of like the heroic golden-haired Marine who took matters into his own hands.
No, I don't. And I'll go on the record as saying I don't like to see the life leave someone's eyes.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, and it's sad to see any life go down the drain. I was talking to my mother about it, and we were both like, you know, at the end of the day, this person was like a deeply troubled person with a violent criminal past and an ongoing drug addiction, but he was also like a handsome and talented guy who died at a very young age in very sad and pathetic circumstances. And no one deserves to die.
No one deserves to die. And it is, he's to me like a casualty of the system.
Don't say it, Dasha. Don't say it.
Not of like white supremacy or definitely not of Daniel Penny.
You know, I say this in the way that Trump clarified the grab him by the pussy comment, but this guy's whole recent existence was a provocation for violent retribution. And he was getting increasingly more and more aggravated.
Well, he was on drugs.
Yeah.
He was already mentally ill.
Yeah, but he was getting more aggravated because like nobody was taking him up on the challenge. And then one guy eventually did, and it ended tragically. And there's something almost like Greek tragedy about this sublimely tragic moment where these two people were brought together with almost perfect optics. This young, homeless, drug addicted black man and this young, blonde, former Marine white man in this like bizarre tango.
Yeah.
I understand why people are like captivated by and obsessed by this story. Somebody tried to come at me on Twitter and said that it was frankly sinister that I was so interested in this incident, especially because of the company that I keep, i.e., you know, racists on the internet.
Guys, yeah.
And I responded by saying like, it's completely normal that someone like me would be interested in a case like this because it's a bellwether case with major holes in it that's personally relevant to me.
We live in New York.
As a woman with a young child who routinely rides the subway. I don't view this at all as a racial incident. But it's become so thoroughly racialized because of the perfect optics.
Well, the framing also of like AOC had a tweet to the effect of like Jordan Neely was begging for food, and the white man killed him. That framing is so cynical and evil and like actually race baity and twisted.
Well, she is a race baiter.
I know, it's no surprise coming from her, but I saw a lot of people like echoing this, a lot of like lefty types like echoing the same sentiments, which I think is just in such, I don't know, extreme poor and bad taste, like is
bad faith and poor taste.
And that to me is as bad as like right-wing people celebrating like senseless death.
That's like, what I said to that one e-girl. I didn't say it to the e-girl. I said it to another girl in the Menchies, that people preemptively and prematurely calling it murder when there's a pending investigation.
Well, now
to
today
like
we
virtue
found out,
signal and empathy monger and show what a quote good person TM they are is like the woman version of anonymous men with Greek statue abbeys gloating and fantasizing about being the angel of death.
Literally murdered. It's like, that's not, I'm not one of those people who takes umbrage with the liberal use of literally, but he literally killed. He killed him. That is factual.
And I guess they ruled that it was a homicide, which is a technical term that does not necessarily.
Well, he's being charged with second-degree manslaughter.
Calling it murder is very reckless and indulgent at this stage. And also we went from murder to execution to lynching real quick.
I mean, also the thing that makes me feel extremely gaslit is that Penny is not the only man in the video. There are two other men who are not white.
Right.
Also restraining Neely. Yeah. And then there's like a subsequent video basically of Perry putting him in the recovery position, which I don't really know what that is, but the claim that he had him in a chokehold for 15 minutes just doesn't add up. So much makes about no sense. It all makes me feel so
crazy,
insane. Yeah, like crazy.
15 minutes is going to be the new cross state lines. Mm-hmm. But nothing about the story adds up. Obviously, the fact that there's no stops more than like 3 minutes apart on the F train, and that's being pretty generous. Mm-hmm. I ride the F train every day, I know. We're also supposed to believe this narrative that 3 complete strangers randomly riding the train banded together through the osmotic ambient power of white supremacy and ganged up on this young and innocent homeless man who was merely begging for money and singing on the train because he was, quote, annoying. Uh-huh. I think had Penny acted alone, it would give more credence to the left liberal narrative that he had overstepped. Mm-hmm. But the fact that there was 2 other guys assisting him in holding this young man down suggests that he was indeed a threat or was threatening to become a threat.
Yeah. He was presenting. I mean, there also are literally countless incidents of people getting pushed in front of train tracks and like actually attacked and killed, and like crime is up. Yeah. That's not a fantasy, and tensions are high. Uh-huh. And in the initial article I read, it said that Neely said that he's, quote, like doesn't care if he goes to jail,
doesn't care if he dies,
doesn't care if he dies.
He had like a death wish, which is understandable because when you live on the streets for so long and are smoking K2,
I really think it is the K2, honestly. Huh? The K2 is bad.
Sailor tweeted out a New York Times screen cap that talked about Neely being on like a watch list of
the top 50.
Yeah.
And then
America's Next Top Raving Vagrant.
And then the attorneys representing Neely's family, his like uncle who came out of the woodwork. It's like, what? How are you this guy's family?
Yeah. And the award for Best Raving Vagrant goes to... That's what I'm saying. Another thing that I can't square the circle on with the left liberal line, that all these people crying about how we have to have more empathy for the unhoused and underprivileged, who wouldn't have batted an eyelash at him if they saw him begging on the train. They would have just walked past him. He was an invisible person to them.
Or they would have, huddled in fear.
Yeah.
And like tensed up and avoided eye contact with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's also why a lot of women in particular were saying it was murder and were calling for Penny's head, because women's empathy goes into overdrive in these type of situations.
I get it.
The flattering reality is that they know that they would be scared and huddling, as any of us would be. And the unflattering reality is that they secretly want people like this dead or out of sight, at least.
They'd be praying for a PTSD vet to put someone in a chokehold if they were on that train.
To put them in a chokehold. And of course, there was this footnote about the fact that he had like 44 prior arrests, an outstanding warrant. He had an assault charge against a 67-year-old woman who he punched exiting the subway. He had an attempted kidnapping charge against a 7-year-old girl, who I guess he tried to catch on the street. There was a quote from the New York Times that was hilarious. In the days after the video circulated online, many left-leaning politicians and activists said that if Mr. Penny had been black, he would have been kept in custody. I don't think that's how it works anymore, y'all. Doesn't somebody like Neely being out on the street with his rap sheet and outstanding warrant kind of contradict that point?
Exactly.
No offense.
No, it's backwards. Right, and then people like to make the case that everyone went to fucking law school reason, I guess. But they like to point out that Penny couldn't have known about Neely's criminal past, as if like his erratic and frightening behavior
wouldn't point to that intuitively.
Like, you don't, and I don't think he meant to kill him. I think it's, I mean, he was out that day like thirsting for blood, like his like PTSD instincts kicked in.
Yeah, liberals with the help of leftists like to create these situations where there's no law and order, and then they like to use it as a pretext to punish ordinary citizens who take matters into their own hands in the power vacuum.
Yeah,
that's always how it be.
Why do they do that? What's wrong with them?
Well, I think like the overwhelming leftist response in favor of Neely and against Penny, the reason that leftists are so empathetic toward Neely is because they literally identify with and relate to him, because leftists and vagrants are literally on the same spectrum of antisociality. It's just a matter of degree.
They're terrorists.
Yeah.
But also I think that they are, I mean, about a week before this, I tweeted about how I was depositing some checks at the bank and there was some vagrants in the vestibule.
Yeah.
And Sam Adler-Bell, another reason I didn't wade into this discourse was because I don't want some fucking faggot sniping at me. Like, I don't need your little don't quip at me. Don't. And so I like foresaw, I got a little preview just of like using the word vagrant.
Yeah.
Of how many people are quick to be like, like, first of all, vagrant, much like retarded, is a descriptive word that means someone who is not where they should be.
Yes.
It implies that they are not where they belong. It is definitional. There's nothing problematic about pointing out that vagrants shouldn't be in the vestibule of a bank.
This has been the truth for approximately 1 million years.
And then they say like, oh, these rich people. And it's like, I think the part of it is, yes, that they're on this antisocial spectrum, but they're also completely out of touch.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that wealthy people do not go to the bank to deposit checks.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been to a bank or on the train, or like they just don't. It's really easy to be this like really empathetic, good. Sam Adler-Bell said something to the effect of like, people who consider themselves to be good.
It's called being a decent person.
Don't say stuff like this. And it's like, well, you don't know what's going on. You live in a fucking dream.
Yeah.
Anyway.
While the rest of us live in a literal nightmare.
While the rest of us are in a nightmare. Yeah.
And, you know, speaking of empathy, why is there no empathy for like ordinary citizens and their children who ride the train every day? Like ordinary, hardworking citizens.
Wealthy people?
Yeah. And I saw like a
who
lot
are
of
housed?
leftists and liberals being like, well, he had a right to be on the train just like anybody else. He had a right to have a mental episode in public. If this sort of behavior makes you feel uncomfortable and unsafe, you're a pussy. If you feel uncomfortable and unsafe, well, that's just a fact of life of living in New York City, and you should just pack up and leave, you pussy. And my feeling is like, if a person has a right to randomly and arbitrarily have a chimp out on public transit, other people have the right to react.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
ain't nobody reacting for you. And I've had this thought many times when like various vagrants have like menaced me and or the baby on the train, which happens more often than you would like to think. That like if something really went down, like if something really popped off, nobody's helping me.
You don't know that.
I mean, one hopes that there would be a Zoomer Marine sitting next to me on the train, but that scenario seems fairly unlikely.
I wish Curtis Sliwa was.
I saw Curtis Sliwa in a Midtown diner a couple of months ago. And
was he wearing the beret?
He was wearing the beret.
Yes.
He was wearing like a Guardian Angels anorak. He looked so cute. And I was honestly so starstruck that I didn't go up to him and introduce myself.
Understand.
And I really regret it.
I would,
because he's an attention whore and he would have loved the attention.
Of course.
I regret it almost as much as I regret not coming up to Amy Wax at the New Criterion event.
Which, at the gala?
No, it was like another one, but you were there.
At that book.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I would have been scared to approach Sliwa as well.
Yeah, but he seems fairly harmless.
We literally need guardian angels.
We do, yeah.
We literally need guys to wear berets. And
we need more guys to join the guardian angels.
Yeah.
Fellas, if you're listening, that's a great pastime for creative Zoomer men who don't know what to do with their energy and passion.
Get that beret.
Join the guardian angels. Yeah. I have a friend whose name I will not be doxing, who volunteers at a homeless shelter, which would go against her reputation as a woman of the right wing. And she has a very reasonable take on this, which is that the people that enter the shelter system are very often decent individuals who have fallen on bad times, and they're really trying to turn their lives around. But there's always going to be a population of people who are too troubled and too ill to want to enter into that system where you are like subject to drug tests and oversight. And the other thing, of course, on the flip side, you could argue that being in a NYC shelter is probably a brutal and grueling process because you're subject to like robbery and rape and all sorts of other antisocial behavior. There is always going to be a small outlier population of people who want to live on the streets because they don't want to have responsibility.
And you don't even need, I have a friend who lives near the Bowery Mission, and like those guys like hang out on the block all day. Like, you don't even need to have that much responsibility to subsist in the shelter system. Yeah. It's like, it's not that draconian, but there are, Neely R.I.P. was on the top 50. He's one of the top 50 people that are like the most
the most homeless.
The most homeless and scary. And that's like, if you're one of those people, you're, probably a Gemini. I don't know. Like, I bet a lot of those people are Geminis.
I'm so sick. I'm going to go on Wikipedia and look up Jordan Neely's star sign. He was definitely a star.
He was. The picture of him in his Michael Jackson uniform makes me really sad too.
Yeah, I'm such a woman in a libtard. I look at this boy who looks like Willow Smith, he was so cute. He's so cute and handsome, and I want better for him, but maybe he didn't necessarily want better for himself. But again, I'm like of the mind that nobody deserves to die and nobody is beyond redemption.
I agree. That's very Christian of you.
You have to believe that.
Yeah.
It doesn't say when. Yeah,
I can't find Daniel Penny's birthday either.
Okay, weird. So one's a Gemini and the other one's a Capricorn.
It's weird the media is suppressing this information. We need all the
do
facts,
their charts.
Okay? We need the
to find out what's going on. More will be revealed by the toxicology report
and the star chart.
What if they were like totally compatible, kind of like you and me, and they could have had a podcast?
Neely could have been a Pisces.
I can see that.
I could see that.
It's classic male Pisces behavior to spiral into tragic and irreparable drug addiction.
And to be a dazzling performer.
True.
It's so at an earlier point in your life. Yeah, to show a lot of promise and moxie.
And the other thing that really kind of bugged me up about the leftoids and libtards, like sharing all these like stories and videos about how he was like this incredible Michael Jackson impersonator, was like, maybe he was also driven to madness over the fact that he had to like literally sing for his supper like a circus seal on the subway.
Much like Michael Jackson was also driven to madness.
To pedophilia.
you know?
It sucks being famous no matter who you are, even if you're like the most famous homeless person in New York City.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, also so many people are like, I saw this guy. And it's like, well, why didn't you help him? Where were you?
This is like when the Arab countries bash on Israel for not being nicer to the Palestinians, but won't absorb any of those refugee populations.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing? These are your brethren, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
They're part of the Ummah, the Muslim community.
I mean, shocking song. There's a top 50. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't...
Who's on the top 10?
Yeah. And why can't we do anything?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It's above my pay grade, honestly, to speculate
on how we can solve the mental health crisis among the homeless.
I'm really surprised that Penny was charged, honestly, because it seemed like I was like, no way. I was like, no. I was like, people have... No one's going to go... Like, people are basically reasonable and can understand the position that Penny was in.
My fear was that... well, they originally interviewed him and let him go and didn't charge him. My fear was that... they would meme some charges into existence because the outrage would be so viral. And I guess that's what happened. So, yeah, he's up for second degree manslaughter, aka reckless endangerment. He can face up to 15 years in prison. This means that the prosecution would have to prove that Penny caused Neely's death and did so recklessly, meaning he knew the chokehold could kill Neely and chose to recklessly apply it anyway. Okay, clearly that didn't happen. Case closed. Like, we've proved it on this podcast.
Yeah, we hire us to be part of your legal team. I mean, that, to me, the most disturbing implication of something like that is that, not that I think vigilantism should be widely practiced, but I think it's just like, it really sends a message of like, deterring people from intervening in potentially like violent situations. Like, you know, no one's saving you and your baby now on the train.
I know, but that's the whole point. It's to like terrorize the population into subservience. I think that's
even
like
if
the
he
end
beats
game.
The charges, which I hope he does. Yeah. It's like
I have to say, like, when
that's not good.
Yeah. I mean, when this story first went public, I remember thinking like, wow, this kid, like from a rational perspective, this kid is really crazy to have pulled a stunt like that on the subway, knowing the optics. Of course, it was an of the moment decision, but we live in post-Floyd America. A homeless, drug addicted young black man is literally the closest you can get to sainthood. And a white, blonde-haired former Marine is the closest you can get to the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Them's just the breaks.
I know.
That's how it be. It's like something out of a Tom Wolfe or like a John Updike novel.
I know. No, it's positively Grecian, as you said.
Yeah, and
like,
so of course it's a captivating story for obvious reasons that have nothing to do actually with like the sinister racial implications, which really don't exist because, as our dear friend Maddie pointed out, the homeless are really their own race. That actually transcends racial lines.
Class issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there isn't. The racial dynamic is just. I don't know how anyone can really buy that.
I know, it's terrifying. And there's also all these blue check black grifters who are like cashing in on this story, like Tariq Nasheed, who I do have a soft spot for. Mark Lamont Hall, Nicole Hannah-Jones, all of them are like coming in their pants right now because this is like too good for their careers.
Yeah.
And they're whipping out all the old like Emmett Till talking points, yada yada. And either way, this guy is probably screwed. I mean, do you think they're going to throw the book at him?
Like convict him?
Yeah, and give him the max sentence?
No, I hope not. I mean, I was wrong. I didn't even think that they would charge him, honestly. So I really don't know. I think like if there's justice, he will beat the charges, but as we've said before, like, the process is the punishment. This is his life now, is like,
well, he has two options. Either he goes to jail for manslaughter, or he becomes like a Fox News influencer. This is really like Rittenhouse 2.0.
I think, I don't know, he should move. He should flee.
He should go to
Bali.
Yeah.
He should go like really far away and just never come back.
He should go to some tropical island and like knock up some beautiful black woman and have like 16 kids.
He should be like surfing and chilling.
They're going to make the black guy who helped him hold Neely down testify against him.
I mean, no one's talking about those guys at all.
They're total footnotes to the story, even though they were like, clearly they had some mutual mano a mano agreement that came about spontaneously.
He must have been acting really scary. I really believe that. Like, I don't think he was just like meekly asking for food,
for alms. Yeah,
or being like you're like basic erratic person, which are around all the time and don't get put into chokeholds. Like, I think they must have been legitimate. Like, I don't know. That's what I would like to believe. That's like what I understand about the world that like I live in.
Well, and
New
it's
York.
funny because when you talk to actual normal people, everyone, once again, across age, race, socioeconomic class, whatever, seems to agree. If it turns out he was murdered, I will eat my words on Red Scare podcast.
That would be awful, but I just can't. That would be really. I would be really surprised if that was the case. But okay, so there's like protests.
Oh yeah.
But they're nothing, and they're like trying to meme it into another like George Floyd summer, but people are not having it, and it looks like there's like max like 100 people.
Yeah.
Who are all clearly
taking over the train tracks.
So embarrassing.
Getting precariously close to that third rail.
So embarrassing.
I know.